The scene opens with a gruesome accident, blood scattered everywhere. Amid the chaos, a young man sees his girlfriend with her uniform stained red. He wonders what she's doing. The story flashes back to the beginning. He realizes everything began with one request she made. Onomichi, the town where they live, is known as a tourist spot with retro cityscapes and a magnificent view of the Seto Inland Sea. Earlier, the girl asked the protagonist to meet her after school, which brought him to a beautiful spot on the edge of the school grounds known as Pom Pom Cliff. At this location, the boy, identified as Kurohashi, receives a confession from his classmate Hamura Hiyori. When she confesses, he remains completely blunt. She quickly apologizes for the suddenness of the revelation, but insists she is serious about wanting to be his girlfriend. He interrupts, noting that it isn't surprising, as he figured she would confess soon. Hamura blushes at his directness. He internally reflects that he has found her cute ever since they became desk neighbors in the second semester. They share a history of chatting daily, shopping together, and eating lunch during breaks. He asks why she chose him, admitting he understands they are friends, but is confused about what makes him appealing as a partner. Hamura smiles and explains that he possesses something she lacks. While she worries excessively about everything, he is able to form opinions and make decisions swiftly, a trait she deeply admires. This compliment flusters him, making him happy. When she presses for an answer on whether they can go out, he asks for a moment to clear his head. She excitedly offers to wait a year, but he insists he only needs one night. Later, Kurohashi stands at a crossing, waiting for a train to pass. He checks the news on his phone, reading about a spreading virus, and requests for citizens in Tokyo to refrain from going out. He notes the situation is worsening and feels tense. Just then, a girl sneaks up from behind and teases him for not crossing, pointing out that the train has already passed. This girl is Urabe, his childhood friend and neighbor. She is a bright presence who has been inseparable from him, to the point that they have never been placed in different classes. As they walk, Urabe playfully comments on his habit of reading the news. Meanwhile, he wonders how she will react when she eventually finds out about Hamura's confession. After Urabe turns toward her street, Kurohashi heads home. Upon entering his room, he tosses his bag and rolls onto his bed, unable to distract himself from the proposal. Frustrated by his lack of calm, he checks the news again to switch his focus. He suddenly sits up in shock, reading that the Heavens Council has resolved another major issue. The Heavens Council is a think tank organization known for solving impossible international problems and conflicts behind the scenes. He admires their ability to intervene and stabilize a dictatorship that was in shambles due to a military coup. He respects their power to involve the United Nations and keep control, wondering if he will ever be capable of achieving such feats in the future. Back in his room, Kurohashi's mother calls out that it is time to eat. Hearing this, he motivates himself, thinking that he must study hard to eventually escape this cramped, 3-tatami mat room. The narrative reflects on the concept of the world. It notes that there was a time when the term was misused to describe either a narrow boundary surrounding oneself or everything out of one's reach. However, as time has passed, the world is now arguably in the hands of the people. The next day at school, Kurohashi sits at his desk deep in thought. Hamura approaches him, wishing him a good morning and immediately pressing for an answer regarding her confession. He cautions her, noting her loud tone and pointing out that the classroom is not the right place to discuss such matters. She acknowledges they shouldn't talk there, and he suggests they meet after school. She agrees enthusiastically. However, he anxiously glances backward at Urabe, who is chatting with her friends. He worries about whether she noticed the interaction or if he looked strange yesterday. Returning to the plan, he proposes they meet on the roof, as it is usually deserted after school. Hamura blushes and agrees, but suddenly realizes she is on cleaning duty and needs to fetch the day's printouts. She dashes out of the classroom, leaving her bag behind. In her haste, her bag tips over and a small notebook falls out. Kurohashi quickly grabs the bag to steady it, but notices the notebook on the floor. The cover reads, "Request Note." Before he can inspect it closely, his friends approach, asking what is up. Startled, he instinctively hides the notebook in his pocket and dismisses their questions, deciding he will return it to her later. Later, during the lunch break, Hamura tells him that she still has work to finish and will be late. He agrees to wait and heads up to the roof alone. While waiting, he contemplates how to let her down gently. He resolves to reject her request, reasoning that he appreciates the sentiment but wants his first relationship to be with someone he loves from the bottom of his heart, rather than someone he just finds cute. While looking through the wire fence of the rooftop, Kurohashi spots Hamura down below. She appears to be talking to someone behind the storeroom. He strains his eyes and wonders if she is speaking to a teacher, an elderly man, or perhaps her father. Sitting back down, he feels the weight of the notebook in his pocket. Remembering it belongs to her, he opens it out of curiosity. He begins flipping through the pages and is confused to find a list of requests that have already come true. He reads entries where she requested the teacher to change her seat to be next to him, and another requesting him to eat lunch with her. He is bewildered, realizing that events he thought were coincidences, like the seating arrangement, were written down here. However, as he flips further, the content shifts drastically. He finds official-looking statements about the country, including a note about Japan not intervening with a specific religious sect. The sudden shift from high school romance to international politics shocks him. Suddenly, Hamura appears and demands the return of her notebook. Kurohashi apologizes, explaining he picked it up that morning and intended to return it. He hands it back. She clutches the book tightly and asks if he looked inside. He admits he saw a few sentences, but claims he didn't understand their meaning. Hamura sighs, stating that keeping secrets from someone she likes is insincere. As the wind begins to blow heavily around them, she reveals the truth. Her requests are absolute, and no one can refuse them. People once romanticized the world as an unchanging, distant beauty. However, modern society has come to realize that the world is actually a fragile thing that will crumble without proper care. Back on the rooftop, Kurohashi asks for clarification regarding the claim that requests are absolute. Hamura explains that during her strict childhood, she discovered a specific method to make her parents, and anyone else, obey her wishes unconditionally. She adds that she keeps the details secret but records these instances in her notebook as a cautionary measure for herself. While he nods outwardly, internally, he dismisses her as a bit eccentric, assuming she cannot distinguish between fantasy and reality. Sensing his doubt, she decides to prove it. She suddenly requests that he dance. Despite only knowing moves from a junior high festival, he immediately stands up and performs a stiff calisthenics routine. As she giggles at the sight, she commands him to perform a musical. He instantly begins singing, only to snap out of it a moment later, shocked by his own actions. She points out that he just performed embarrassing acts he would normally never do, simply because she requested them. He is terrified, realizing he obeyed without a shadow of a doubt. He connects this to their history, realizing that when she invited him to lunch or to hang out in the past, he agreed without hesitation solely due to this power. His voice shaking, he asks why she didn't use this ability to force a yes to her confession yesterday. She shouts back in frustration, explaining that she refuses to manipulate the feelings of the person she likes, as that would bring her no happiness. He realizes that he had fully intended to reject her moments ago. However, seeing the desperate emotion of this timid girl changes his perspective. He recognizes a newfound desire to understand her better. Bowing formally, he accepts her confession, stating he looks forward to dating her. She smiles and blushes with joy. Later, as they descend the stairs together, the atmosphere lightens. They make small talk, and she reveals that her family has been in the shipbuilding business for generations. Continuing their conversation on the walk home, he mentions that his family runs an izakaya for tourists called Shubao Kurohashi, assuming her family might have visited it before. However, the girl stares at him with a completely blank expression. She hesitates before asking him to stop calling her Hamura-san. Preferring her first name, Hiyori, she adds that she intends to call him Miharu as well. When he nervously protests that it feels too intimate and sudden for mere classmates, she disregards his embarrassment. She quietly issues a request for him to use her first name. Instantly, his body obeys against his will, and he finds himself calling her Hiyori. He shouts in frustration, realizing he can no longer revert to their old way of speaking. He is terrified by how compelling her power is, and warns her not to abuse it. She agrees, stating she doesn't want to rely on it too much either. They begin discussing the ethical boundaries of her ability. He agrees that minor requests, like asking her sister for sweets or her mother for a favorite meal, are acceptable. However, when she suggests asking a teacher for test answers, he firmly draws the line, calling that completely out of bounds. Eventually, they arrive at the bridge leading to the ferry for Mukaishima. They chat briefly about the commute, noting that the boat ride is unexpectedly short and cheap. As the boat approaches, Hiyori prepares to leave, but she turns back for one final question. She asks him a hypothetical moral dilemma. To save one innocent hostage, is it acceptable for 5 kidnappers to die? He falls silent for a moment but answers that, if necessary, the life of the innocent hostage outweighs the lives of the 5 criminals. She smiles, looking visibly refreshed by his answer. She thanks him, saying it was exactly what she expected, and bids him a genuine farewell for tomorrow. He watches her leave, unable to ask why she asked such a heavy question. Afterward, he arrives at his own house. As he heads upstairs, his mother calls out from the kitchen, mentioning that Eri is coming over to play later and suggests they eat curry together for dinner. He agrees and jumps onto his bed in his room. He stares at the ceiling, unable to shake the feeling of discomfort regarding her question. The topic was dark, yet she acted entirely normal. Trying to distract himself, he opens the news app on his phone to check the latest updates on the Heavens Council. Suddenly, the door to the room slides open. He jolts in surprise, shouting at the intruder for not knocking. It is Urabe, who sits comfortably on the floor, dismissing his complaint. She points out that since they have known each other since they were babies, there is nothing left to be embarrassed about. He frustratedly counters that it would be too late if an accident occurred. She ignores him and tosses a game controller in his direction, telling him to catch it. As he looks at her, he internally reflects on how she has changed from the complete tomboy she used to be, thinking that the growth of girls is terrifying. She interrupts his thoughts, asking if he is reading the news again. He admits he is, and asks for a minute to finish. They begin playing a video game but quickly lose the match. She screams in frustration while he apologizes, admitting his aim and movement are off today. He promises to focus in the next round. She stops screaming and asks point blank what is wrong with him, noting that he is acting weird, losing his cool, and playing messily. She sharply asks if he was confessed to. He freezes, fearing his expression gave him away. He panics, wondering how much he should reveal. However, she pulls back, sitting down and feigning indifference. She claims she doesn't care who confessed or who he dates. He breathes a sigh of relief. He reflects that their relationship is light years away from romance. He views love between childhood friends as a fantasy story from another world. He believes she feels the same, which is why their bond is so comfortable. Just then, his mother shouts up that it is dinner time. Excited, she demands one last round before they eat. He agrees, determined to win this time. Meanwhile, Hiyori stands on a viewing deck, looking out at the water and the town. She tries to pinpoint where his house might be located relative to their school, wondering what he is doing and what he is having for dinner. Suddenly, a man approaches her from behind, laughing softly and informing her that it is almost time. She smiles and agrees. Clenching her skirt, she whispers a promise to him that she will be back soon. At that moment, a breaking news broadcast airs. It reports that at dawn on Wednesday, a UN military assault was launched on an extremist group. The attack resulted in the death of 500 members to safely release 34 hostage students. The report notes that the extremist group has been significantly weakened, and the public awaits an official statement from the Heavens Council, which is believed to have planned the operation. The next day after school, Hiyori stands in front of a convenience store fridge, staring indecisively at the array of vitamin juices, soy milks, and lattes. Miharu asks how long she plans to dwell on the choice. She turns around nervously, apologizing and asking for just a little more time. He smiles, realizing that while he usually hates wasting time, waiting for her is actually enjoyable. Deep down, he is simply happy to have a girlfriend. When she asks what he decided on, he shows her a can of coffee, noting that he always gets the same drink. Hiyori admires his decisiveness, commenting that it is very like him. When Miharu asks why she is so hung up on a simple drink choice since it won't change her future, Hiyori explains her reasoning. She wants to choose something tasty to ensure she is in a good mood while they talk. Miharu blushes at the sentiment. He tries to relieve her pressure by suggesting that even if she picks a bad drink, it would make for a fun conversation topic. However, this backfires. Hiyori realizes that this logic opens up even more choices to consider. Realizing he unintentionally added fuel to the fire, Miharu decides to let her take her time. He wanders off to browse the magazine rack, picking up the latest issue of a manga anthology. Suddenly, a loud shout interrupts the peace. A man holding a knife stands at the counter, screaming at the clerk to hand over the cash. Miharu quickly realizes this is a robbery and ducks behind a shelf. At first, he wonders if it is a prank or a filming session, but seeing the robber bully, the receptionist confirms it is real. However, Miharu notices strange details. The man is not wearing a ski mask, his hands are shaking violently, and the knife appears to be a worn-out kitchen tool. Miharu deduces that this is likely a sloppy crime, born of financial desperation rather than a professional heist, as such incidents are rare in Onamichi. He concludes that the safest course of action is to remain still and let the robber leave, ensuring both he and Hiyori stay unharmed. However, just as he resolves to prioritize safety, he sees her calmly walking straight toward the armed criminal. Miharu watches in disbelief as Hiyori walks toward the danger, wondering if she has failed to notice the weapon. However, she turns back briefly to assure him that she can resolve the situation using her request. He realizes her plan. If she can use her ability to command the criminal to stop, they might survive. However, he worries about the timing. If she fails, the situation could turn fatal. She approaches the counter and attempts to command the robber to discard his weapon. However, before she can finish the phrase, the robber shouts over her, interrupting the request. He realizes with horror that the attempt has failed. The robber, shaking with adrenaline, snaps at her to shut up and grabs her. He locks her in a chokehold, pressing the knife against her neck and declaring her his hostage. Miharu is terrified. The robber threatens the receptionist to hurry up or she will get hurt. He desperately wants to save her, but his body is paralyzed by fear. He screams internally at his own cowardice. The robber then decides to flee, dragging her out of the store toward a car. Despite his staggering legs, he forces himself to run after them. Outside, the robber warns him to stay back or he will kill the girl. As the criminal reaches for his car keys with trembling hands, he accidentally drops the knife. Seizing the opening, Hiyori speaks clearly. She commands him not to pick up the knife, to release her, and to surrender obediently to the police. The robber's expression goes blank, and he instantly obeys, raising his hands in surrender. Miharu sighs in relief, thinking the request worked and she is safe. Suddenly, a gunshot rings out. The robbers get shot in the head, and his lifeless body collapses. Miharu falls to the ground, traumatized by the sudden gore. Hiyori, now splattered with blood, stands over the body, confused and horrified that he was killed despite her successful intervention. Suddenly, a fleet of black cars surrounds the area. An older man emerges with a surveillance team. She shouts at him, demanding to know why they shot the suspect when she had already neutralized him. The older man calmly replies that it was a necessary precaution. He approaches her, wiping the blood from her face with a handkerchief, and advises her to understand her own value better. He then informs her that she will need to make requests to the hospital and witnesses to erase their memories of the incident. She agrees, but adds a specific condition. Miharu must be allowed to keep his memories. The man acknowledges that regardless of his opinion, if she requests it, he cannot refuse. She walks over to the trembling boy and apologizes for the shock. Miharu asks, voice wobbling, what is happening? She explains that her power started with small, selfish requests to make people forget her mistakes. However, after seeing tragic news on TV, she wondered if she could help. Her requests expanded from people around her to criminals, then politicians, and eventually international figures. As her influence grew, so did the organization supporting her, receiving commissions from the UN and NGOs. Miharu is confused, struggling to process the scale of what she is saying. He asks if she has heard of the Heavens Council. She reveals the truth. The people surrounding them are members of the Heavens Council, and she is both its founder and its leader. She asks him to keep this a secret. On the weekend, Miharu steps off the boat and walks along the dock at Mukaishima, Hiyori's hometown. He recalls how she had somewhat forcibly arranged this date. She had insisted on a Saturday morning to avoid the Sunday tourist crowds, eager to introduce him to her friends and local spots. She welcomes him cheerfully, noting that the weather is perfect for sightseeing, just as the forecast predicted. He blushes, feeling suddenly nervous seeing her in casual clothes rather than her school uniform. As they stand there, he reflects on how strangely peaceful his daily life has remained. Despite witnessing a robbery, seeing a man die, and learning that his girlfriend is the leader of the Heavens Council, nothing has changed between them. The topic never comes up, and her casual demeanor bothers him. He feels he knows nothing about her important side as the leader of the organization he admires. Suddenly, an elderly man from the toll booth calls out to them. He recognizes him as the boy who usually walks Hiyori to the ferry and asks if he is her boyfriend. Miharu introduces himself, and she happily confirms they started dating last week. The old man laughs, praising his handsome looks and clever appearance. He begins to tease her, mentioning that she has taken a liking to boys before, but she frantically interrupts him before he can finish the story. As they walk away, Miharu feels a sense of warmth. He thinks that seeing the scenery she grew up in might help him understand her better. The old man calls out from behind, telling him to take care of her because she is a good girl. He turns and shouts back a promise to do his best. This bold public declaration flusters her completely. She squats down on the ground, hiding her blushing face and muttering that he is unfair. Meanwhile, Urabi wakes up at her home. Her brother immediately comments on the severe dark circles under her eyes. She denies his accusation that she stayed up playing games, gloomily admitting she just had a lot on her mind. Her brother asks her to return a borrowed manga to Miharu's place, but she refuses, stating she was told he is busy today. When her brother casually guesses that Miharu might be on a date with a girlfriend, Urabe freezes. She pours juice into a glass until it completely overflows, then snaps at her brother in frustration. Back on Mukaishima, the couple explores the town. Hiyori outlines their itinerary, visiting her neighborhood, her former school, and then the tourist spots. Miharu comments on the geography, noting that unlike his sloped neighborhood, the land here is quite flat, making it feel like a foreign country. He looks at her, thinking she is incredibly cute. She excitedly points into the distance, identifying the school she used to attend and her family home. Miharu looks at the house, reflecting that if he knew nothing about them, it would seem like a normal middle-class home. However, knowing that she grew up here makes it feel special to him. She expresses a desire to show him the interior, but since her entire family is home, she decides against it to avoid running into her father. He agrees, though he internally sighs with relief, terrified that his heart might explode from nervousness if he went inside. The couple moves to a nearby convenience store. Sitting on a bench outside, Miharu enjoys a drink that she claims is unique to this specific location, a favorite of hers since elementary school. She then suggests they establish some dating rules, such as how to address each other in public or who they should tell about their relationship. She frames these agreements as special promises just for the two of them. He agrees, thinking she looks like she is having fun. She brings up the commute, suggesting they walk home from school together. She hesitantly asks if this is okay, knowing he usually walks with someone else. He assures her it is fine. He usually walks with Urabe out of habit, but she is often late anyway. Hiyori playfully accepts this, noting that she has to share her precious resource properly. The conversation shifts as she warns him there will be times she cannot reply to messages due to work or when she is in the living room. He immediately tenses, assuming she is referring to her duties as the leader of the Heavens Council. However, she immediately pivots to complaining about her father, describing him as an annoying, overprotective man from the Showa era who hates seeing her on her phone. Gathering his courage, he decides to broach the heavy topic. He tells her that if her requests ever become a burden or cause her trouble, she shouldn't hesitate to rely on him. He expresses a desire to be helpful, even if it's just a little bit. Miharu waits anxiously for her response, his mind still lingering on the trauma of the robbery and the weight of her secret. Hiyori looks stunned for a moment before her face lights up with excitement. She thanks him, saying his permission helps a lot. Miharu feels a heavy emotional atmosphere, but she completely misunderstands his intent. She confesses that she wanted to request to eat yakiniku for dinner, but was worried because she has eaten karaage and tonkatsu recently. She admits she is actually worried about her weight. He looks at her, momentarily thinking she does look a bit heavier in certain areas, but quickly shakes his head to banish the rude thought. She stands up and bends over to throw away her bottle. In doing so, she accidentally reveals her undergarments. Flustered by her defenselessness, he panics and sprints away, shouting that he needs to use the bathroom. Inside the bathroom, he breathes heavily, trying to calm his racing heart. He laments that she is too guarded in some ways, but too defenseless in others. He also realizes he failed to discuss the Heavens Council again, wondering if she simply doesn't need the help of an average high schooler like him. Just then, he receives a text from her with a picture of some stray cats she found. Chuckling, he exits the bathroom. He passes a tall boy who is stepping up to the sink. He worries that he was talking to himself too loudly just now and scolds himself for being careless. As he walks away, the tall boy murmurs to himself, calling him too innocent. Meanwhile, Miharu returns to the bench to find her completely swarmed by stray cats, causing him to jolt in surprise. While waiting for him to return from the bathroom, Hiyori plays with the stray cats, wondering if he got lost again. She pulls out her phone to check directions to the bicycle rental shop, but suddenly, it starts ringing. As she answers the call, her cute expression shifts into one of seriousness. She confirms the details with the caller, acknowledging that it is starting soon. Later, the couple enjoys a refreshing bicycle ride through the town. Miharu comments on how good the cool breeze feels, and she agrees, enjoying the moment. They decide to take a short break at a local cafe. He tastes some complimentary chocolate, praising its rich bean flavor and balanced sweetness. She is pleased that he likes the recommendation, and he thanks her for showing him the shop, considering buying some souvenirs. Despite the pleasant date, Miharu feels an internal conflict. He thinks that although he visited her hometown today, their hearts still feel miles apart. She interrupts his thoughts by asking if there is anything specific he wants to do in the future. She suggests visiting his hometown next time, or perhaps taking a trip to Hiroshima. He realizes she is genuinely concerned about his feelings. Looking at her warm smile, he becomes flustered and suddenly recalls a memory with his friends. In the flashback, a friend commented on how cute Hiyori is, claiming he would hug her every day if she were his girlfriend. In the memory, he had shouted angrily at the friend to stop talking about her. Back in the present, he clenches his teeth, chiding himself for having perverted thoughts about hugging her right now. He frantically drinks his beverage to wash away the embarrassing thoughts. Regaining his composure, he decides it is time to stop avoiding the elephant in the room. He looks her in the eye and finally asks about the Heavens Council. He tells her he wants to know more about her work, her thoughts when making heavy decisions, and reminds her that as her boyfriend, he wants to support her. Hearing his sincere words, her serious expression softens into a gentle smile. She apologizes, explaining that she cannot reveal everything because the council handles highly confidential information. She emphasizes that the fact she established the organization and currently leads it must remain a top secret. Seeing his nervous reaction, she advises him to simply think of her role as a regular part-time job. However, she admits there is one exception to the secrecy. She reported her confession to her assistant. This revelation leads to a shocking admission that the council conducted a full background screening on Miharu and his family to ensure they weren't spies. He spits out his drink in disbelief, asking why they would investigate common civilians. She quickly reassures him that he and his family passed the check without issues. She further reveals that bodyguards are currently monitoring them, even on this date. She explains that she requested the security team allow them to date normally, like other couples. He internally questions if their situation can really be called normal, but he thanks her for the honesty. As they prepare to leave, he worries about having discussed such sensitive topics in a public cafe. She casually dismisses the concern, revealing she already used her ability to request that everyone nearby forget their conversation, leaving him in awe. The couple resumes their cycling trip. Hiyori proves to be incredibly athletic, speeding up the steep slope with ease, while a trembling boy struggles to keep up. Finally catching up at the bridge, he is mesmerized by the stunning scenery of the sun shining on the water. She calls out to him, and as he turns toward her, she snaps a surprise selfie of the two of them. Later that night, a news broadcast highlights a growing international controversy. The President of the Republic has released an unprecedented statement criticizing the Heavens Council. He argues that because the group does not publicize its structure or location, it cannot be trusted as an official organization. Consequently, he refuses to acknowledge their efforts in the Civil War and demands they withdraw immediately. In the studio, political commentator Agatha Sane weighs in on the situation. She notes that while the organization's methods remain a mystery, their international achievements, such as initiating democratic movements, are undeniable. However, she highlights a growing suspicion among experts that the Heavens Council is actually a Japanese organization. She explains that their early activities, such as education reform and maintaining low terrorism rates, were heavily concentrated in Japan, suggesting deep ties with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Watching from his room, Miharu realizes the gravity of the situation. He connects the commentator's analysis to his girlfriend, noting that the organization's focus on Japan makes perfect sense given she is its founder. He wonders if even her absolute request power can resolve a diplomatic crisis of this magnitude. His thoughts are interrupted by a text notification. She has sent him the selfie they took earlier. He smiles and calls her immediately. When she answers, he thanks her for the photo, though he self-consciously remarks that his face looks weird. She laughs, reassuring him that he looks cute to her. Gazing out his window, Miharu tells her how much fun he had today. She, looking out her own window, agrees warmly. They make a promise to visit Hiroshima together next time. However, that promise hangs in the air. From that day forward, Hiyori never returns to school again. It has been 2 weeks since their date and a week since Hiyori stopped coming to school. That night at home, Miharu finally breaks the news to Urabe that he has a girlfriend while they play video games. He explains it is their classmate Hiyori, which is why he hasn't been able to walk home with her lately. She stares blankly at the screen, munching on snack sticks. She offers a flat, emotionless congratulation, noting that the other girl has been absent lately anyway. Dissatisfied with her lack of surprise, he stops playing to confront her. She ignores the emotional beat, shouting at him to use his special move in the game to kill the enemies. When he presses her for a better reaction, asking why she isn't more shocked, she shrugs. She asks how his first love went, wondering if it was fun. He answers with deep sincerity that it was, in fact, really fun. Flustered by his sudden seriousness, she throws a pillow at him, shouting that she will beat him in the game to cover her embarrassment. As the mood settles, he reflects on the date. He recalls the robbery and their conversation about the Heavens Council. He admits to himself that being able to talk about Hiyori's secret, even for a moment, was special. However, that connection makes her prolonged absence from school even more worrying, knowing she is the leader of such a massive organization. Noticing his gloomy expression, Urabe turns to him and bluntly asks a personal question. He flails in panic, shouting at her wild imagination and denying the accusation. She calmly comments on Hiyori's impressive figure, noting that her size is surprising every time she sees her. He yells that she has the wrong idea and that he isn't dating her for physical reasons. She twirls her hair, advising him that girls don't like being found unattractive either. She suggests that next time, he should just blatantly ask if she wants to do something lewd. He rejects the terrible advice, shouting that he could never say that. He resolves to close the distance between them little by little at his own pace. She refocuses on the screen, warning him that he is about to lose the match, and he frantically returns to his controller. After finishing their gaming session, Miharu walks her out. She stretches, thanking him for the fun evening. He compliments her for taking the MVP title again, noting she set a new kill record. She casually replies that beating people up feels nice. He points out that she always chooses aggressive classes like Berserker or Assassin, leaving him no choice but to play as the healer. He complains that she gets mad whenever he fails to support her perfectly, finding it hard to keep up with her chaotic pace. However, her playful expression suddenly turns serious. She murmurs that it would be nice if Hiyori came back to school soon. He hesitates before agreeing. She looks at him intensely, advising him to tell Hiyori how he feels so that he won't have any regrets. He is stunned by her serious tone. Before he can respond, she bids him good night and leaves. The next day at school, Hiyori is absent again. Miharu sits at her desk, worrying. He reasons that a normal cold shouldn't last this long, though he fears she might have caught the new virus strain circulating. He messages her continuously, but everything remains unread. He suspects her silence is related to the Heavens Council, wondering what is happening behind the scenes. However, he notes that there has been no major news about the organization recently. If anything, the world has been strangely peaceful since their date. Unbeknownst to him, Urabe watches him silently from the back of the classroom. After school, classes end as usual. Miharu walks home alone along the path he used to share with his girlfriend. Looking up at the sky over Onamichi, he feels as if time has stopped for him, even though the world continues to move forward indifferently. He stops by the bridge, staring at the water. Dark thoughts begin to intrude. Is she not replying because a rival organization kidnapped her? Is she caught in a war? Has her existence been erased? He violently shakes his head, shouting aloud to stop the negative spiral. Just then, his phone rings. He freaks out, hoping it is Hiyori, but the caller ID shows Rinta, Urabe's younger brother. The boy asks if Miharu is free and hesitantly inquires if he fought with his sister. He denies it, asking if something happened to her. Rinta reveals that his sister hasn't been sleeping lately, acting as if she is plagued by something she won't discuss. He insists it isn't because of late-night gaming. As her brother, he instinctively feels it has something to do with Miharu. He suggests that Miharu should care a bit more for her. After the call ends, Miharu reflects on the conversation. He realizes that Urabe's sleep deprivation is likely linked to the shift in their relationship now that he has a girlfriend. A thought crosses his mind. Does she have feelings for me beyond friendship? He quickly dismisses the idea as creepy, unable to imagine their sibling-like bond turning romantic. As he resumes walking, he suddenly senses someone watching him. He ignores it at first, but the feeling persists. He glances toward an alleyway and spots a shadow hiding there. It clicks in his mind. He thinks he knows exactly who is following him. Miharu sprints down the street, determined to catch the person monitoring Hiyori. He realizes that he has seen the same figure frequently since earlier in the day. Predicting the stalker's movements, Miharu purposefully turns toward an alleyway to bait him. The hooded man smiles, believing he has tricked his target, and follows Miharu into the alley. However, he is shocked to find Miharu waiting for him. Miharu immediately confronts the stalker, shouting that he knows the man is from the Heavens Council. He reveals that he has already taken photos of the man hiding in the park and threatens to leak them online if he doesn't get answers regarding Hiyori's whereabouts. Realizing he has been cornered, the man scratches his head and lowers his hood. He introduces himself as Makio, a staff member of the Heavens Council. Later, the two sit down for a drink. Makio hands Miharu a can of black coffee, impressed by the mature choice. He remarks that when he was 17, he only drank ginger ale or cola. Miharu politely dismisses the compliment. Makio admits he is surprised by Miharu's courage, noting that it takes balls to pull a stunt like that against a secret organization. Miharu observes Makio, thinking that the man is different from what he expected. He lacks the polished aura of a professional agent. Picking up on this, Makio laughs self-deprecatingly. He admits he has no dignity or academic background, describing himself as a goon. He explains that while the council is full of qualified experts, ex-doctors, lawyers, military personnel, and government officials, the organization also needs guys like him to operate. Makio assures Miharu that the council approved this conversation. He then addresses the main concern, Hiyori. He explains that she is currently working at the organization's headquarters. While she would normally be safe there, an unexpected situation arose, forcing her to stay busy following up on matters. He promises that she is fine and will return soon. Hearing this, Miharu finally relaxes, smiling with relief and thanking Makio for the information. Makio laughs at Miharu's anxiety, remarking that it is normal to feel overwhelmed when one's first high school girlfriend happens to be a girl who can move the world at will. Miharu agrees, admitting that he never imagined such a reality when she first confessed to him. Desperate to bridge the gap between them, Miharu pleads with Makio to tell him more about what Hiyori is like inside the organization. He explains his internal conflict. While he knows for a fact that she impacts the world, the Hiyori he knows never behaved like a leader. Her sudden disappearance for a week without a word has left him feeling helpless, and he begs for even trivial details about her life within the council. Makio looks at him and bluntly refuses. When Miharu falls silent, Makio reminds him of the reality. To the members of the organization, Hiyori is the commander-in-chief. He warns that if a goon like him were caught leaking top-brass information to an outsider, his memories would be erased, and he would be fired immediately. Makio points out that Miharu only retained his memories and received special treatment solely because of his status as her boyfriend. He sternly advises Miharu not to misunderstand his position if he truly cares for her, reminding him that, in the end, he is just a high school student. The words cut Miharu like a blade. He tries to shout a rebuttal, but finds his entire body trembling, unable to form a coherent argument. Seeing Miharu's distress and inability to speak, Makio softens slightly and suggests they take a walk along the water to cool off. Miharu feels annoyed, wondering why the older man is getting so worked up over trivial things, admitting he doesn't understand adults. Makio notices the frustration and gets serious. He explains that he understands Miharu's feelings because he, too, was once pushed away from the core of the organization, left unable to help despite wanting to do more than anything else. Curious, Miharu asks how a man like him ended up joining the Heavens Council. Makio agrees to share his story, revealing that his little sister was the reason he got involved. He explains that she is 10 years younger and a genius, always taking first place in school, unlike him, who started working immediately after high school to be independent. He asks if Miharu remembers the controversy 2 years ago regarding the changes to the general admission exams. Miharu recalls the event. Makio explains that the proposal involved private institutions drafting exams and charging exorbitant fees at limited venues. At the time, his family was broke. Their father had gone missing, and their mother was raising them alone. Makio tried to chip in, but they had no money for the new exam fees or travel costs, forcing his sister to consider giving up on her dream school. Desperate and refusing to let her give up, Makio vented his frustration online. That was when he met Hiyori. Miharu is shocked, realizing that Hiyori, who was just a junior high student at the time, was responsible for overturning that national policy. Makio admits he thought it was a prank or a cult recruitment at first, but Hiyori simply listened to his story and promised to make a request. Miraculously, the proposal was voided in the nick of time. Makio's sister was accepted into her school as an honor student with a full scholarship and fee exemptions. When Makio tried to send a thank you email, he received an invitation to join the organization instead. He finishes his story, laughing that is how a goon like him entered the council. Miharu is speechless. He realizes that the Heavens Council isn't just a distant dream. It is a hard reality that helps real people with mundane struggles. He finally understands the amazing work Hiyori is doing. Makio declares that while his sister is his raison d'etre, Hiyori is his benefactor. He vows to give his all to protect her as a member of the organization. He then extends a hand to Miharu, telling him that he must protect her as a boyfriend. Stunned but resolute, Miharu shakes his hand, accepting the responsibility. Meanwhile, in a desolate and destroyed region, a figure stands amidst the rubble wearing a cloak. It is Hiyori. She gazes out at the destruction, whispering a promise to return soon.
Here I am, know it's been